everyone, this is Denise with Liquid Color, and today we are going to be doing a palette update video. So I've been doing watercolors for not quite 2 years now, and I, as you can tell, have a bit of a problem when it comes to watercolors. My palette has grown over the last 2 years, but also I just like to reorganize my paints and come up with nice palettes that are useful for various situations. So today I'm going to go ahead and cover what I have in my collection, what I use most frequently, and then also a couple of updates. This palette that I did here, I did as a new palette setup early on my channel here on YouTube, and I've made some changes, so I wanted to let you know about that. Lots of you have had questions about my little Cotman set. I have made changes to this one as well, and a lot of you have asked what I have done to change those and how I organize my pants, so I'm going to take a look at that too. As well as some of the new palettes that I have set up from the mini haul video. I had a couple more come in the other day, and I set those up as well. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright, this is the first palette that I ever owned that wasn't a Reeves or Prang set, and I love it dearly. It's held up really well over the last almost 2 years, not quite 2 years. And I'm not going to take quite as close a look at this because I have another one in the exact same model that I actually did in a previous video. This one I had in the video of setting up your own palette. I'll put a link somewhere on the screen for you there. And it has this removable tray that you can add mixtures on, or I hold my color palette behind it. Sorry about that, my phone was going off. So I recently updated this palette. It used to have a couple of minor differences on it. When I first set this up, I was really excited to add in some more brown tones, as well as change around my primaries and my dark colors. But I've made a couple of changes, and I'll tell you why. So before here, I had the Van Dyke Brown Emission Gold, and I just decided to switch to Burnt Umber because their Burnt Umber is my favorite color that they have. It's dark enough, I can mix it with my dark colors if I want it to be any darker, so I didn't find myself using the Van Dyke Brown all that much to get a darker brown. I also took out the Red Brown. It's a really pretty color, but I can mix it easily on its own, and I didn't want it to be occupying a whole palette space. I went ahead and put in Trans Red Iron Oxide instead of a Burnt Sienna. This one is from M. Graham versus this one was from Daniel Smith. I still love the Daniel Smith variety. I just wanted to try something new, and it's a nice tone. It's a little bit richer than the Daniel Smith one, so I was excited to try that out. This one had the Holbein Quinacridone Gold, and that's because that was the only quinacridone gold I had at the time, and I wanted to try practicing with that. And since then I've gotten the Daniel Smith. This is the single pigment version, so I decided to go ahead and keep that in my palette versus the Holbein, which was a lot more yellow. I'm going to have a color profile on this next week, so I'll talk more about quinacridone gold. I've got my other standards, like I had taken Yellow Ochre out of this palette and I wanted to put it back in because I found myself missing it. And then everything else from here to here I think is pretty similar. I've got, these color charts are a little mirror image of each other. So I've got my 2 yellows, my 2 reds, and then I added in a purple. I missed having a purple on my palette, and I got a rose of ultramarine in, so I added that back in. But my 2 blues are the same, my phthalo turquoise is the same because it's my favorite color, and so I had originally had Winsor or phthalo green blue shade in my first palette, and I took it out because I didn't like the color on its own, and I never found myself using it because I just didn't like it. At the time, I did not realize what a valuable mixing color it is, so I decided to put it back into this palette and work with my other colors with it. I don't use it straight out of the pan, but I do use it for mixing. I took out green gold to do that because even though this is a really lovely color, I never use it. I'm not really a landscape painter, and I don't have a use to be using a lot of different shades of green, so I went ahead and took that out for a better mixing tone. The rest of the palette I think is pretty much the same, other than I switched out my indigo for Jane's Gray, and we are going to be talking about Jane's Gray on Friday in the Burnt Sienna video, and that is a mixture of Burnt Sienna and ultramarine. I mix it up straight out of the tube, mix it to the desired tones and consistencies, and then put it into my palette wall. I love using this color. It's the dark that I always go to, and it's a staple of my collection, and we'll talk more about that on Friday. So this is my favorite palette at the time. If I don't have a predetermined color that I know I need to use from another set, this is the one I open when I'm just looking for basic colors or to start a painting, and then I can use some of my other palettes if I need to for extra colors. This palette you saw pretty early on for me when I was reviewing my M Graham paints, and this is just my pure M Graham. It's an open palette, so I use a piece of watercolor paper to cover them up because I have a cat and the cat hair would get everywhere if I didn't. These are the M Grahams that don't dry up all the way, they stay sticky, so dust especially likes to settle into them. And this is the palette that they sent to me. The only one that I've added is I picked up their sap green because the set that they sent me did not come with a green. I don't use the set on its own all that much because I like the mix sets that I have from the other companies, and my M Grahams are mixed into those, but I have this one just because I put out the paints and I didn't want to waste them, so if I ever need them, they're here for me. You guys also saw my review of my Schminckas. These were a birthday gift from my mother, and this was my nice pan. The Schminckas are the ones that are all down here on this bottom row, and I had the other half of the pan that I had for open stock. So there's one little one over here of quinacridone gold, and then I've got 3 other Daniel Smith watercolor sticks. I've got Rosa Ultramarine, which I added to my collection pretty late, so I had a pan of it here. This is the tube quinacridone gold from Daniel Smith. This version is different than this version. And then I also have a little pan of my Jane's Gray for when I'm only working out of this palette and want that to be handy. I have 3 handmade paints here. I haven't done a review on them yet, but they're from a company called Redwood Willow. They run an Etsy shop. And I don't use this palette a ton. In my review of the Schmincke, you'll notice that I wasn't as big of a fan of them as I think other people are. I like really rich, vibrant colors, and these are more subtle pastel colors, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful, but I don't use them as much for my paintings, and I also didn't pick these colors. It was a predetermined set, so a lot of the earth tones that I use a lot are much more opaque in this set, and I just don't find myself needing to use them all that much. This little tiny set here, I had ordered a set of 10 half pans and 10 full pans off of Amazon, like empty pans that you can fill, and they came in this box, just kind of like loose stock. And so I decided to go ahead and these are my Turner watercolors in this front row here. And then I also picked up the Van Gogh paints when I was in Hungary. So I just used this box to hold on to those. And also when I was switching out the blue palette that you saw earlier, when I was taking out some of those colors, I put the extra paint that I didn't want to throw away just in here, kind of floating around. It's my kind of odds and ends packet. This green was from my vintage tin, which we can take a look at right now. This is pretty much unchanged from when I did the video for setting up my vintage tin, except for the fact that I got the green Apatite Genuine after. I had already set this palette up and I wanted to put it into a palette, so I took out this green, replaced it with that green, and that's all there is to it. I would love to say that I use this vintage palette more because I loved setting it up. I love that it's in this cute little box, but there's just not as much mixing space, so I don't find myself using it as much, which is quite a shame. You can see there are some dents in there. I don't know if you can tell in that dark shade. It's almost gone in my Mission Gold one, and there's other ones as well that I've been using, but hopefully I'll get around to using this palette more often. Alright, now what you guys have been waiting for. I'm sure many of you have been asking me about my little Winsor Newton palette here. Last time you saw this palette from me, it was still filled with these factory pan sets. So this little contraption, there were 3 of them in here, and they held on to the pans of paint. So I didn't like that they rattled around and they're really big and clunky and took up a lot of space. So I changed the layout of my palette here. And let me go ahead and pull this apart so I can show you what I mean. Alright, this set originally came with these 3 sets that would hold the individual pans of paint. Now I took those out because before between the 3 sets and this little brush, it was all full, but there wasn't a whole lot of space for anything else, whether that's brushes or extra pans. So I took all of these out, and I actually adhered them to a piece of cardboard. Now this cardboard I had wrapped with a Ziploc bag, which didn't prove to be the most convenient option that I could have done for myself. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this apart today and show you, kind of re-show you a better method for changing around this particular travel set to have more space. Alright, instead of all of that troublesome Ziploc bag, which the only purpose was to keep this piece of cardboard dry, I'm going to go ahead and put some packing tape on it. And I'm going to go ahead and trim off the excess. Alright guys, so I have my laminated sheet here, and before I go ahead and put it into my palette, I want to line up my colors on it. Each of these is going to have an adhesive dot on it, so you just stick it to here and pull it off. These ones are already done. And we're going to try and line up the middle 2 first, so that I can make this as even as I can. And in this particular set, I'm doing them slightly in from the edge of the cardboard because there's a little notch in the middle here that's going to get in the way of it laying all the way flush up against the edge. And then I can go ahead, move this out of the way, then I can go ahead and just line up the other ones going out from either side. So I have a nice little row there. Then I'm going to do the same thing for my yellows. And for this top row here, I have the bottom row to guide me. So now that I have my little tray of colors here, if I want to change them out, I can easily go ahead and pry them off and then just stick them back when I am done with them. So I'm going to go ahead and there's adhesive dots already on the inside of this container, but I'm just going to go ahead and push it in and line it up with the bottom. Line up with the bottom of the enclosure, and I'm pushing up against the edge here. And so what I'm left with is a nice little centered palette of 12. There's not quite enough room to get 2 more here, but I suppose if you wanted to try and angle them the other way, if you angled them vertically here instead of putting a water brush in, then you could probably get 2 more pans on the edge. But this makes a perfect little cubby hole. There's a line here, like a piece of plastic that used to hold in those sets of 4 tray holders, but it perfectly holds the Koi watercolor travel brush. So I really like that I can fit an extra brush in there. I can put the Winsor Newton brush in the top still, where the Koi brush does not fit because it's too small. So I hope that was helpful if you have this set and want more room for either more pans or for a water brush, or any other type of travel brush that would fit in here. So this is a great solution for me anyway, and hopefully it helps you out too. Alright, last here I've got 2 of my little folding palettes that I just went over in my mini haul in the last vlog. These are from Jerry's. The company is Creative Mark. They were $4 each, and they have 15 wells that are nice and deep. This last set is a skin tone palette that I just set up. I haven't even gotten to use it yet. You know that I don't really paint people yet, but I wanted to give it a shot. So I went ahead and bought some new pigments that were pretty inexpensive from Turner, and put together this palette with other colors that I already had. So right after this section, we're going to go ahead and have a setup, not really a tutorial, I guess a demonstration on how I put this palette together. Thank you guys for watching. I hope that this was helpful or at least interesting to watch what colors that I use and which palettes that I have. I hope the little setup with the Winsor Newton set was helpful, and stay tuned for the skin tone demonstration. One more thing before you guys continue to watch is that I finally have a support button on my page, which is really exciting. If you click on the front page of my YouTube channel, there's now a little box on the right hand side that says support, and if you want to donate $1 or $2 to keep the content of this channel informative and current, I would be very, very grateful. So thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you on Friday. Alright everyone, here's me with some footage from the other day. I'm doing a little voiceover here, and here I'm just trying to pick out the colors for my skin tone palette. You'll notice on the top row I have a lot of the very pale skin tone colors that I can use as bases for these different shades, and then I also have some dark natural tones that will help me darken skin tones if I would like to do darker skin, and also a row of kind of primary colors plus purple. The purple is for dark shadows, the blue is to make cool skin tone colors, the yellow is for warm skin colors, and then the reds are for blushes and lipstick. Here I am setting up all my tubes next to my palette and counting to make sure that I have the correct number of tubes that I'm supposed to have. It's a good thing that I did double check because I had counted improperly and had forgotten one of my tubes of paint in my drawer. I am also switching out a couple of the colors from the previous shot with the different swatch cards for ones that I changed my mind last minute and wanted to swap out. So now I get to go ahead and do the fun part, which is squeezing all of the paints into their wells. This first color is Burnt Umber from Mission Gold. We've got Burnt Sienna from Turner, Raw Sienna from Daniel Smith. This is White Gouache from Winsor Newton. Buff Titanium from Daniel Smith. It was a very, very, very sticky color, so I was just trying to get some out of the cap there and wipe off some that spilled out. Same went for Naples Yellow, which is this next color here by Daniel Smith. It was also very soft and gooey. Then I have Naples Yellow from Turner. I believe this is One Brilliant red shade from Turner, and then the Mission Gold One Brilliant number 2. This is Cinnabar from Turner. Rose Madder from Mission Gold. Crimson Lake from Mission Gold. Permanent Yellow from Turner. Cerulean Blue from Turner. And Winsor Violet or Dioxazine Violet from Winsor & Newton. So I know I still owe you a proper review on the Turner watercolors. If you look at the pan, you'll notice that they are kind of stiff and kind of cakey compared to the other watercolors. I have found that even though they market them as artist watercolors, they seem to have a lot more filler than other watercolors do. They are incredibly inexpensive tube paints, and they're large tubes of paint, so it makes sense that there is a lot of filler in them. But so that they don't crack and fall out of my palette, I wanted to go ahead and add a little bit of honey to each of these wells. So what I'm doing is I'm getting a toothpick, dipping it in some honey, and then mixing really, really well in each of those wells so that the paint is more fluid. You can also use gum arabic or glycerin for this, just very, very, very tiny amounts. However, I did not have those on hand, and so I am using honey. And here I'm just going to swatch out the colors so that you can see them. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you on Friday.